focaccia recipe. Hi everybody. Hey. We are live to answer your questions. I can kind of see things happening here and I can kind of read from here. So feel free. Hi, Angela. Feel free to ask, Monique, any and all questions about bread baking. So, or baking in general, or chocolate. Chocolate also fantastic. Hey, Jackie. Okay, so I'm going to just start reading some of the questions that you guys have sent in, if that's cool. And I'll scooch back up to the phone and read them as they come in if you guys have any questions. Okay, so bread camp questions. Let's start with Denise. So Denise asked, hey guys, asked if I got some starter and started feeding it. She was doing a 1-to-1 ratio of flour to water. Then she increased it to 1, 2, and 2. Not much rise, and I'm on day 5. So there are a lot of different ways to start a sourdough culture. Best way to store bread. Okay, I'll answer that in a second. Lots of different recipes for starting a sourdough culture. I don't want you to freak out about it. I only want you to think about the fact that your yeast that's in that flour is going to need some warmth, some flour, and some water, any kind of sugar. If you're not seeing any activity, put your culture in a warmer spot. So right here, hang on, I'm going to grab mine. This is the sourdough culture that we started together in class yesterday. And we had a little bit of activity. I just fed it, so you're not seeing it quite as much, but what you want to see is just a little bit of bubbling. And the kind of flour you use is going to, yes, you can cut the focaccia recipe in half and bake it in an 8x8 inch pan. So you're going to see just a little bit of bubbling. If you're using rye flour, because rye can't expand in the way that gluten expands really well for bread flour, then you're not going to see any lift. So I just want you to look for tiny, tiny bubbles. Pop it in a warm place. Sorry, I'm going to answer a question. I began my starter yesterday using what I had, gold medal bread flour, but today my flour order came in from a local mill. Can I start feeding it with new flour? Yeah, so take half of it out, like throw half of that sourdough culture away and feed it with a little bit of like half bread flour, all-purpose flour, half of that fantastic freshly milled flour. But typically I keep my starter alive with bread flour. And then I use the expensive flour from the mill to make things like my bread doughs. So I don't use my really beautiful expensive flours for keeping my starter alive. Can I use pastry flour as a substitute for bread flour? Nope. Sorry, Lorana. It doesn't work. It's not going to make you a tall loaf of bread. So keep your pastry flour for pie crust and for muffins and cookies. But you want to use a stronger flour for making your breads. And those of you who live on the west side, the Santa Monica market is open tomorrow. And there are a couple of stands that'll be selling whole grain flour. So that's Fat Uncle Farms, where you're getting your almonds from, and Rowan Mills. And then if you're near the market, I'll be in front of Stefano's Pizza tomorrow morning, giving away some sourdough starter and some conventional yeast. So stop by there. What about AP flour instead of bread flour? Yes, so all-purpose flour is an okay sub for bread flour in making bread, but it's not going to give you as tall a loaf. All right, do you feed your starter the same amount every time? Equal amounts of water and flour. Yeah, if I'm using whole wheat flour, I use a little bit more water because the bran is really thirsty, but yes. Next question. I have some yeast in my fridge that expired in 2019. Don't use it. I thought the mayor just shut down all farmers markets in the city of Los Angeles, not in the city of Santa Monica. I refrigerate my starter. Do I know when I need to feed it? So if you keep your starter in the fridge, it's asleep. Take it out of the refrigerator, throw half of it away, and then feed it some water and flour, and feed it at least 3 times with about 6 hours in between each feeding. What do I look for when shopping for a sourdough starter on Amazon? I have never shopped for sourdough starter on Amazon. I'm so sorry, but I believe that King Arthur sells some, and you'll just have to wake it back up. So warm place for starter, meaning even in direct sunlight. Yeah, someplace warm, and do it in a glass jar. Can I add a pinch of packaged yeast to my starter? No. Don't do that, because those cultivated yeast cells that are grown in a lab are going to overtake any of the wild yeast cells that you've got going on. I can't leave my house. Where can I order flour from when it's in stock? Grist and Toll is shipping, and Central Milling is shipping. What time will be at the market? I'll definitely come back for some starter. I'll be there from like 9 to 1 in front of Stefano's Pizza. It's Baker's Needed that's going to give away the starter and the yeast. So can you use the starter discard for recipes? Yes. Oh, Amy, I'm glad you asked. I take my sourdough discard, which is equal parts water and flour, and I add it to my banana bread batter. I add it to my pancake batter. My feed doesn't look like yours. I use bread flour and water, and there's a layer of water on top. Just mix it more. Don't worry about it. That's not a problem. It's a little alcohol fermenting. Do you leave your starter outside the fridge? Yes. If you leave it outside the refrigerator, you're going to need to feed it every day because it's active, it's warm. And when you put it in the fridge, it goes into hibernation, so it slows down. Who is shipping again? Central Milling and Grist and Toll. Grist and Toll is our local mill here in Los Angeles. Do you stir the sourdough starter? Yes, I stir it a lot, like right when I'm mixing it with water and flour, because oxygen is going to help to excite the yeast cells. So yeast needs oxygen, water, and sugar in order to wake up, and that sugar is the carbohydrate that's found in your flour. You guys, these are really good questions. Okay, I'm going to move on to Elizabeth's question, kind of going back and forth a little bit. Hi Clemence, I started a sourdough starter a week and a half ago and made a few loaves of sourdough. After I used my starter for the bread, should I feed it again immediately? Yes, or continue to only feed once a week, leaving it out on the counter. If it's on the counter, you got to feed it every day. Otherwise, it's just going to like eat all it can and then expire. So if you're going to keep your sourdough starter on the counter, feed it every morning when you wake up. If you're going to keep it in the fridge, take it out and feed it at least 3 times before you start making your sourdough breads. Shipping flour, yes. Central Milling, Hi Rose, and Grist and Toll. Both of those companies are shipping flour. Hi, I miss you too. So how much water and flour do you add to the starter when you're ready to feed it? Equal parts, make it look like pancake batter. Don't overthink it. Do you save all the discard from starters or only when it's had time to become more active? So anything I'm tossing, when you're feeding your sourdough starter, what you're doing is you're throwing most of the starter away, and you're only keeping a little bit in there so that, yes, Leona, that's right. You're only keeping a few in there because you want the few yeast cells that are left in your sourdough starter container to make new yeast cells. You don't want to keep old yeast cells alive. So your discard is all the stuff that you were going to throw away. I'll tell you right now what feeding your sourdough starter means. Okay. Oh, hey, Maite. Okay. You guys, your questions are, you're going to have to rewrite your questions because I don't know exactly how this works. So when you feed your sourdough starter, you throw most of it away, and then you give it equal parts water and flour to encourage those few yeast cells that are left in that container to replicate themselves and grow new yeast cells. Okay, somebody asked earlier, what's the best way to store bread? And it's either on the counter, like this. I keep it in a towel, like that. So I cut my bread, and then I do this, and I cover it with a towel, or in the freezer. So I use my grist and toll rye and red wheat flour to start my starter. I think you said it might not get a lot of lift. Oh, you will get some lift, but not so much with the rye. It doesn't mean it's not active. It just means that rye doesn't have those strong gluten proteins that expand to capture the yeast's gases that are coming out. So it's working. You just can't tell as much as if you were to use bread flour. Not a bread question, but give you Easter ideas. Yes, so you're going to mix some Rice Krispies with a little bit of peanut butter and melted chocolate, and then mold it into those, you know those plastic egg things? You're going to put a little oil in there and then pack those in, freeze them, take them out, and then you have like this Rice Krispie egg-shaped thing, and then you're going to dip that in melted chocolate. It's really good, preferably milk chocolate. And that's really easy for kids to do. And if you want, do magic shell, so you melt the chocolate with a little tiny bit of coconut oil so that once you dip the frozen Rice Krispie eggs, it firms up right away. You're welcome. Good to see you. All right, I'm gonna get another question. Okay, Rebecca asked a really, really good one. Whole wheat is okay for starters, so is bread flour. Again, yeast is yeast, and you're just creating the perfect environment for it to grow in. Okay, Rebecca asked, question for tomorrow. If you decide to let the focaccia rise in the fridge overnight, do you need to let it rest and warm up again before taking it out, or do you take it right into the oven? You put it right into the oven. You can let your doughs rise at room temperature for like an hour to 3 hours, or you can let it rise really slowly overnight in the fridge, in which case you move it straight from the fridge to the preheated oven. My sourdough starter, equal parts wheat flour, unbleached, and water. Day 1, no termination. No, I see what you're trying to say. That's okay. Day 1 is fine. You're going to see a tiny little bit of bubbles starting to happen. Just put it in a warmer spot, because the warmer it is, the faster that fermentation is going to take place. Let me see. Denise asked, this is one of my favorites, can you please talk about different flour substitutes? It's been hard to find all-purpose or bread flour. Can you use almond, rice, or cassava flour? So none of those flours have gluten in them, so they can't provide a lot of structure. And so recipes for gluten-free flours are, I'll get to your question, Kira, in just one second. They are going to need gums and different things in order to create that structure. My favorite person to sort of look up when I'm using those flours is Aran. She runs a blog called Cannelle-Vanille. So Claire, if you can write that into the notes there, her recipes are great. They're gluten-free but whole grain. So they're really interesting and they work really well. All right, Kira, can you help with cake weight versus measuring cups? I tried weighing everything yesterday on a zeroed scale, but it was about a cup less than the recipe called for by a cup. It kind of depends how you use a measuring cup. So typically bread flour, all-purpose flour is 120 grams per cup, and whole wheat flour is 130. Water is about 240 grams per cup. Is it okay to put in the oven if your oven pilot stays on or lightly warm? That might be a little too hot. You can turn the oven on and then turn it off and then put your starter in there. If we're rising in the fridge, do we use the same amount of yeast at the start? Yes. Oh, hi, Dina. What are you baking, Dina? Tell us. All right, can you save this video to your highlights? Claire, can you take care of that? Because I don't know how to do it. But yes, we're going to try to do that. What else? Here we go. Oops, my computer. I got to take something out of the oven. Can you guys wait 1 second? Sorry.
I'm my mom's help. Hi, I'm my mom's helper.
Sometimes. Hold, please.
Yeah, I might be watching on the computer. So
hold on.
Okay.
Watch out! Watch out! Watch out! Okay. Okay, watch out. Sorry.
Hi.
This is Xavier. Okay. Other questions? Anybody else?
I'll be back in a little bit.
Okay. Thank you, Zavi. I have so much respect for all the teachers. Hi. We are not making anything. I'm just answering baking questions right now. Hi, focaccia today. Just started day 1 of my own sourdough starter. Yay, Dina. Awesome. Okay, Lana, I'm looking at Central Milling's website, and they have many types of bread flour. Should I use the one that says high protein? Yeah, I really like using the ABC flour for bread flour. Miss you too. Hi, I'm new here. Very happy that you're doing this. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks. I have a couple dogs in here now too, so just ignore them. Okay, other questions. I get this question a lot. How long does freshly milled flour last? It's just fine. You may have heard people saying like, oh my gosh, like it'll go bad so quickly. I don't want to buy it if I don't use it all. It's a-okay. It's going to have like a good 6 months to a year shelf life. I mixed my watery starter. Should I keep the lid open? I would just put a towel over it. Hi, Claire. I can see you. And just got them from my delivery. What did you get from your delivery, Ravi? And who had the question about central milling? Give me a moment. Ba-ba-da. And they have many, oh yes. So the ABC flour is what I use for bread making. As far as keeping the starter warm, sunlight is probably bad for it, right? Best to put a towel over it in the sun. That's what I do. I have a towel over it. Where is my starter? Here we go. And it's in the sun. Yes, I can, Claire. I can do that. Okay, can you just give us a basic step, 1, 2, 3 explanation of baking sourdough? Not detailed. Yes, I can do that. They only have a 50-pound bag. Yes, Ayana, I'm sure you have a neighbor that you can share that bag with. Okay, so, central milling. Yes, they ship. So here's how you make sourdough bread. Actually, all breads. All breads follow the same steps, okay? When you're using store-bought yeast, everything happens faster. But all bread making follows this format. You wake up your yeast. For sourdough bread making, you're going to take active sourdough starter. So not sourdough starter from the fridge, but sourdough starter that is more active. So it's floating, it smells sweet and tangy and not too vinegary. And I have a whole video on this on our IGTV page. And you're going to wake it up with water and flour. In sourdough bread making, that's called making your levain. Then you're going to mix the dough. And then you're going to knead the dough. For sourdough breads, kneading is stretching and folding. It's the same technique we used in the focaccia video yesterday. Then there's a bulk rise. It rises. You guys are gonna have to re-ask those questions in a second. Bulk rising happens in a big blob. For sourdough breads, that process takes about 3 to 6 hours at room temperature or 12 to 18 hours in the fridge. Then you shape your bread, and then you proof it. That means you let it rise either at room temperature for a couple hours or in the refrigerator for up to 12 hours, and then you bake it. So sourdough bread making follows the same principles as all other bread making. There's just a lot of time between each step. It's not like conventional yeast. How do you swab out the starter for dry yeast? You can't, because we just talked about the timing part of it. Hi, Anis. And that is that sourdough breads need a lot longer than regular breads do. And then for conventional yeast or cultivated yeast, which is store-bought yeast, you got to wake it up with a lot of sugar really quickly. So they're not usable one for one. Trying to waste less. Do you bake your sourdough in a Dutch oven? I do make my sourdough in a Dutch oven. It's really old and I got it at a yard sale and it works great. How does semolina flour work in this discussion? So semolina flour, hold please, is milled from durum wheat. So this is durum wheat. And it is really great for pasta. And Nan from Grist and Toll, the mill, has some really great recipes for how to bake with durum wheat. Hope that helps. What would be the 5 tools to buy to bake bread? So glad you asked. Okay, number 1, it's a little dirty. Bench scraper. And what size Dutch oven do I use? I use a 3.5 quart, but you can use up to a 6 quart. So this is a bench scraper. It's my favorite tool in the kitchen, like by far. And then when I'm baking sourdough breads, I can't pull it down right now because I can't reach it. I have a tiny kitchen, so everything's very vertical. I use these baskets called Benetton. They're made out of cane. And that's it, just good quality flour. Can I bake bread in a tagine instead of a Dutch oven? That is a great question. And in terms, so the answer is yes, but I have never done it before. The percentage of protein in a strong flour is going to be up to 14%. So between like 11 and 14%. Can you describe how much starter I leave in when feeding it? Can you leave a tablespoon amount or more? Yeah, tablespoon is perfect amount. I just kind of leave it coated inside and then add water and flour. Let's see, what other questions do we have? Okay, what are your containers your flour is stored in, and will they keep it safe from pests? So I use these things called Cambros. I really wish somebody would develop a glass version of this because I don't love plastic. But you can keep your bread and your flour in anything that's airtight. Does your sourdough bread take a portion of which flours? If you could reword that question. If you don't have the baskets, what would you use? When I'm proofing my bread, I'm going to step away for 1 second so I can show you what I proof my bread in and what your alternative is. Okay, sorry. Okay, these are called Benetton. So once I've shaped my sourdough bread, I actually put the breads in here, and then I let them proof in there. But if you don't have one of these, get the deepest, narrowest bowl you have in your house. Line it with a kitchen towel like this, and then add some flour. Be very liberal with the flour so that the dough doesn't get stuck to the linen. But the deepest, narrowest bowl is important because you want to train your bread to rise upwards and not be slack. You kind of want it to get nice and tall. Okay, any tips on what to do with sourdough discard? Yes, so add it again to the liquids in any of your recipes for making everything from banana bread to pancakes. IKEA has big glass storage things, this is true. Slightly unrelated question, we've been making pizza and an out of cornmeal underside to the oven, but it sticks every time. I don't love cornmeal for pizza, use semolina flour instead. Can you use different flours in the starter? Example, I started with whole wheat flour on the first day. Do I need to use whole wheat? Doesn't matter. You can use all-purpose flour, you can use bread flour, you can use whole wheat flour. If your starter is not really active and nothing is happening, give it a little crack. This is, where is it? This is rye flour. So rye will make your yeast super excited. So when things are sleepy, or especially in the winter time when I'm making bread and I want my sourdough starter to be more active, I'll use a pinch of rye in the starter to wake it up faster. Okay, sourdough bread. If you had unbleached white flour and some 3 cups whole wheat, can you use a combo of these? Oh, absolutely. We should all be rationing now, yes. Yes, do a blend. So I would do 50% whole wheat, 50% bread flour, and you'd be just fine. All right, let me see if I can read any others. Can you use different flours in the starter? Yep, answered that. Nina, that was really good. I hope that helped. It's just really tough right now to get starter. Can you use the starter with any types of bread and flour? Yes. Absolutely, you can feed it any type of flour. What can I add to sourdough to make it extra sour? Oh, give it more water. Feed your starter more, the opposite, less water. Make your starter stiffer. It'll take longer for it to get excited, which will develop more flavor. What about actual bread with the starter discard? I tried and it was a bit sour. Any tips on adjusting percentages? So if you're making bread with store-bought yeast, add some of your discard to it. Otherwise, it might not be active enough in order to make your bread rise. I made a loaf last night with more salt than normal. It's not rising like normal. Did I kill the yeast? You did not kill the yeast. This is something really interesting. So yeast needs those 3 things in order to wake up and start working. It needs oxygen, water, and food. Salt, though, likes to attract water. So when salt and yeast compete, salt always wins, which is why your dough is rising much slower. Is unbleached all-purpose flour usable for bread flour? It's not as strong as bread flour. That said, these are unprecedented times. Make your bread with the all-purpose flour. It won't be quite as tall, but you'll still have great bread. So don't overthink it. It's going to be okay. How long after I've given the last feeding until I can begin making bread? 6 to 12 hours, I'm going to say. Jackie? How long do you typically auto-lease for? I usually do 30 to 40 minutes, but sometimes 3. Yeah, so auto-lease is the process of mixing the flour and water that makes up the bulk of your bread dough and letting it rest before you add your levain and your salt. Some recipes do it for much longer than others. I gotta check the oven. Hold on, please. Sorry guys, give me just a moment. This is what we're learning later on in today's class at 3 o'clock, is making milk buns. Okay, so I'm going to pull back. My focaccia dough has been stretched and folded 4 times but isn't rising. I have 30 minutes left and it's not rising. Put it in a warmer spot and let it rise. If you wait another hour and it hasn't done anything, then your yeast was probably not well. I have some bread flour that's past the expiration date. Smell it if it smells rancid, which it shouldn't if it's just white flour, but there's really not an expiration date on white flour, and I'll leave it at that. What do you suggest using to store flour? I see all those containers behind you. What do you recommend and what size? It depends how much baking you do. These are my smaller containers. I have much larger ones because I go through a lot of flour. These are called Cambros, and You can get them at like chef supply stores or online, but I prefer glass. And somebody mentioned that IKEA has a lot of glass containers. What's the difference between flour and malted flour? So malted flour is flour that has malted barley added to it. Central Milling does that for their ABC flour, and it's something that's very exciting for yeast. If using King Arthur bread flour, hard red wheat, to make focaccia, do I need more water or the same amount? You're going to need more water, or you can pull back on the flour. So Nan from Grist and Toll, for example, recommends pulling back on flour by 10 to 20%. Milk bread literally has milk in the recipe. I only have non-fat on hand. That's fine, Robbie. Don't worry. Just make it. It'll be a little bit drier, but see if you can add a little bit of melted butter maybe if you've got some butter. Where did you get the proofing bowls? So we sell them on our website. I'm not sure if we're back up and running again, but these are from a company called Brotform, Brotform. Okay, have you used the Artisan Baker's Craft flour? That's what I use as my white flour. Do I need to mix in some stronger flour when using it for sourdough? It's pretty strong. You're A-okay. Go ahead and use that. All right, any other questions? I feel like we went through so many really fast. All right. Somebody has requested to be in this video. I'm going to see what that does. Hello, Ruthie. I don't know how this works, so we'll see, right? Sourdough starter. Parling, what is the quantity that you will use for the recipe? Hello, Ruthie.
Hello. I didn't realize this was going on.
Okay. Well, this is Ruthie, everyone. She grows a lot of plants, and so we're talking about...
Hi.
All right. I've got to get back to answering a couple questions, but I have questions about my garden, so I'll call you in a bit, Ruthie.
Okay.
Okay. Sourdough starter. Parling, what is the quantity I use for my recipe? So typically... what I'll do in a recipe that calls for making 2 loaves of bread, I'll use about 35 to 40 grams of starter. It's like a little bit more than a tablespoon. It's not very much. That's why when I get questions about like, what should I feed my starter, rye, hard red, like just know that there's about a tablespoon of sourdough starter to feed 2 loaves of bread. So don't overthink it. Add some cream to my non-fat milk. Totally. Yes. Great. What else? I only have yeast for making pizza dough. Will this yeast still work for bread making? What kind of yeast do you have? And yes, so we're not going to start for our classes here. We're not going to start using sourdough until Saturday. But otherwise, you should be fine. So active dry yeast or rapid rise. The big difference is rapid rise yeast or instant yeast or bread machine yeast is going to work 50% faster than active dry. If starting a starter with only unbleached all-purpose flour, would grinding up some barley to add to it help? Yeah, you're totally overthinking it. Start it with just the all-purpose flour, maybe day 3, or if you're not seeing things happening, add some barley to it. But right now, just get things going. Slow is good. What is wine yeast and would that work? It would not work, but if you've ever been to a wine cellar and you've seen like yeast on the barrels, that's really important to the fermentation process of wine, which is a whole other class. Where can we purchase fresh, locally milled flour? I don't know. There's this place called Grist and Toll in Pasadena. They are doing curbside pickup and shipping right now. And Nan, the miller, is great about purchasing grain from farmers who are growing grain for the right reasons. Flavor, soil building. So Grist and Toll, if you're in the Midwest or the South, really Hayden Mills. If you're in the Northeast of the US, there's Maine Grains. So I began my sourdough starter yesterday, 50% beehive APF, okay, and 50% Grist and Toll hard white. Is that okay? Sure, yeah. Dark spots, don't know what that's about. Have you ever used yeast water starter? I don't know what that is. I've been making starters for about a year, been through black mold, white mold, all kinds of smelly. So mold is not good, but if your sourdough starter smells really, really sour, it just means it's hungry. The only time your starter is like super bad is if there's mold or it smells like rotten eggs, like sulfuric. Any additional items we need? Butter, milk, etc. Yeah, so we're going to make challah on Friday, and you're going to need eggs and oil and honey for that, apart from your yeast and your flour. And then Thursday, we're making brioche. So that's, and that brioche dough is like an overnight dough. So you'll probably make it on Friday, but I'll show you how to do the dough. So you're going to need some butter and some milk. Yes. Do you think it's because of your kitchen? I don't think so. Do you have books to recommend in regards to baking? Yes, Tartine is my favorite baking book. I don't know if you guys can see it. Yes, Sourdough by Sarah Owens. Little Flour Baking, Good to the Grain. It was written so long ago, but it's such a fantastic book. The Republique book I really like. And Josie Baker has a good beginner sourdough book too. I'm starting to make breads with a pre-ferment. Do I need a closed container to make the biga, or can I just mix in a big bowl? It's better to have a smaller bowl. It'll stay warmer longer. Do you prefer malted ABC or regular? Because I bake a lot of bread, malted. Are you going to show bagels as part of the bread class? You're not the first person to ask. After these 7 days, I'm going to take a day off, and then we'll come back and I'll say about bagels. If starting from scratch with this whole process, what flours would you buy, assuming you can find them? I would get organic unbleached bread flour. I would get spelt flour. So spelt is an ancient grain that makes just the most fabulous food. The answer is whole milk always. And then if you can get a little rye, if you like rye bread, that would be a good thing too. I think I see some bubbles, which could be mistaken as dark spots. Oh, they're bubbles, not dark spots. Hello. I'm trying to think of other questions that have come in that I haven't responded to yet. Hold, please. All right, so yes, adding cream to non-fat milk will work. I think I answered that already. And, email us at hotline@thegourmandiseschool.com if you have more questions about substitutions, but I don't want you to feel like you have to do things perfectly every time. Does it matter if you don't feed it at the same time every day? Totally. Hey, Jailing, how are you? I didn't get my starter yesterday because kids. Amen. But can I start now and catch up? Totally. And then again, tomorrow in front of Stefano's Pizza, Bakers Needed is going to be giving away sourdough starter and yeast. Hi, Rabina. Okay, good. I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, but you can totally catch up. You'll be fine. And you know what? Zach from Clark Street is also giving away starter. I don't know if he's selling it or giving it away, but Clark Street bread in Echo Park. Not sure if my question went through, but what if my starter smells like hot dogs? I have no idea. I don't know what to tell you. It should smell sweet and tangy. That's a really funny question. Do you have a favorite sourdough recipe? For making English muffins? For the starter, what flour? I have spelt bread and whole wheat. Yeah, a bread flour. Just start it with bread flour. Save your good, expensive flours, the spelt and the whole wheat, for the bulk of your bread dough. Because again, only about a tablespoon of starter is going to feed 2 loaves of bread. Where is Stefano's Pizza? On Arizona at 3rd. Yep. Where can I find the focaccia recipe from yesterday? So I'm going to read you what I've been asked to read out loud. And it is, how do we watch? Because I don't even know. Go to our Instagram TV. You can view on your phone by going to our main profile and clicking on the middle TV looking box to see all the uploaded episodes. You can view on your desktop by going to Instagram.com/gourmandisela/channel/. Since farmers markets in LA have been closed, will you be carrying more grains from Wiser Farms? Actually, the Santa Monica market has not been closed. Only the LA markets have been closed, and there's a good chance they're going to reopen. So the Santa Monica market tomorrow is open, and there will be 2 vendors selling flour there. Yes, I will try to save this live if I can figure it out. Can you overfeed a starter? Probably. Ari, chocolate for babka. What chocolate do you recommend, and who will ship? Okay, chocosphere.com has the widest selection of chocolates. We're going to be using Repubblica del Cacao chocolate, but I just want you to get whatever chocolate you can, okay? If you're at the grocery store, just send in a message and ask us, hey, oh, it's so good to see you too. Yes, thank God Santa Monica markets will be open. So for the babka, we're going to use cocoa powder and whatever chocolate you want to throw in as a mix-in. All right.
Back?
And my assistant is back. He's coming to say hello.
Hi.
Hi. Yes. So I love chocolate and bread. It's 2 of my favorite things ever. Do you like chocolate and bread?
Yeah.
Do you want some chocolate and bread?
I want a cinnamon roll.
Okay, go get a cinnamon roll.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh.
How would you revive a starter that started to smell like nail polish? Is it because it was in the refrigerator? Do you prefer finely milled or medium grind? I prefer finely milled. So for a starter that smells like nail polish that's been in the refrigerator, can I wait? Hold on, please. Life doesn't suck for this kid. All right, over here, and you're just gonna grab it yourself, okay? Get your plate. Okay, so it's been in the fridge. Is that what you're saying? It's normal for it to smell very acidic like that. So what I want you to do, okay, that's a good idea, is just take it out of the fridge, pour out that liquid that's on top, the hooch, and discard that, and then feed it. Let me see if I have another question coming in. Okay, Kimberly Talia just emailed and said, hi, just wondering if you know anywhere we can order whole wheat flour, grist and toll. I'm going to email her back because I don't know if she's online in Pasadena.
Is there a knife? I need a knife so we can cut it.
So you can cut what? Okay, hold on, please. Here you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I have a 5-day-old starter with hooch on top, but not bubbly. So it's over fermenting. Are you feeding it every day? Throw most of it out. Keep a little bit in there. Feed it bread flour or all-purpose flour and water, and you should be okay. It's just very, very hungry. It's telling you that it's hungry. Okay. It's a big cinnamon roll.
Oh yeah, do you, Chef Gino, he sometimes has some shows on Gourmandise at 5 o'clock.
That's right. So Zavi's plugging our kids show, which is at 5 o'clock on the live thing, just like this every day. So he gets a challenge from kids who send him in like, all we have in our house is this and this, and help us make something. So if you have a kid, I know Nigel, he is a celebrity, isn't he? Gino is awesome. What can we do with the leftover yeast in our packet? Make more bread. What is the hooch? Alcohol, moonshine. So if this is repeated, what is the amount of flour you use for feeding your starter? Equal parts water and flour by weight. It just needs to look like thick pancake batter. Someone hire that kid. Yeah, that'd be great because then he wouldn't be in this house for very long. I love you. Enjoy your muffin. I have a ton of Red 5 whole wheat flour. Anything I can do to lighten my loaves? Yes, you can use 50% Red 5, 50% bread flour. You can sift out a little bit of the bran, but I think the bran is what makes it interesting. What temp did we cook the focaccia? Like 425 until it's done. So if you've ever taken a class from me and you have heard somebody asking this question, how long do we bake it for? You've heard this answer. You bake it till it's done. And every oven is different and everybody likes a different color. So there, yeah, you're laughing because you know. So 425, I really like my focaccia really dark. Here, I'll give you an example. This has been picked through a little bit by the wolves here in my house, but I like a dark bake on the focaccia. And then, yeah, I don't have AP or bread flour. That's okay. Just use hard bread and sift out some of the bran and you'll be fine. I need some starch. Okay. What's your favorite style of bread? Anything with chocolate. Kevin wants to know how to get a better ear. More pressure. Leave the Dutch oven in the oven longer to get more heat. I can tell it's done by the smell. That's a good answer. How do you store yeast? Just in a cool, dry place. 425. Is there a good way to store dry yeast after it's been open? Yeah, it's like with as little oxygen as possible in the refrigerator. How do you store focaccia? In your stomach. Make panini. Do whatever you need to do. I don't really like putting bread in the refrigerator. I think it gives it like a funny texture. And anyway, so I either freeze bread or I eat it. Okay. You guys have any other questions? Sorry, you're asking, can you feed the starter with different types of flour? Totally. Yeah. Yeah, totally feed it all-purpose flour. You'll be fine. Just don't use bleached flour if you can avoid it. Enzo says, hi, Enzo. Can you show us how to make the levain? I will show you guys on Saturday how to make the levain, but all you're going to do is to take about 35 grams of sourdough starter and then 65 grams of water and flour. So, You mix those together and you wait 6 hours, and that's your levain. But yes, we'll be doing that together on Saturday. How much starter to make pizza dough, flour starter ratio? It depends on the flour that you're using and the length of time for the pizza dough to rise. Glad it could be helpful. Freezer, do you wrap bread in saran wrap or something else? I use the bees wrap paper. Okay, I have a starter and I keep feeding it. It just doubles. Yeah, that's not a terrible problem to have. That's fantastic. Good job. So throw most of it away and then feed it. What should I do? Okay, good. Thank you for doing this. You're welcome. What time? Saturday. So we're posting all of our recipes, all of our video recipes at 3 p.m. every day. So it's not live. We're just going to do this a few times a week. Some like live Q&A like this, but our classes, you'll just, watch them and do them as you please. You can do them out of order if you want as well. And the classes, the videos are about 30 minutes to an hour. How long will, dun, dun, dun. I'm sure it's coming through. How long will videos stay up? I guess indefinitely. I don't know if Instagram has rules about that. Claire, feel free to weigh in. I do not know. That's a good question. Anybody out there? Oh, I missed you too. I don't know who this is though, because you have a different Instagram name than your name, I think. So yeah, the videos you can do. Thank you, Claire. You can do kind of at your liking. And then there's 3 extra videos we put up about the science of bread making, the science, oh, hey, Jillian, the science of wheat and yeast. Yeah, you're welcome for the Q&As. We're going to do these a couple times a week. Claire, can you remind us when? Hold on, I'm actually going to pull it up now. I think I can figure out my calendar. Hi, Chloe. Let me see. We're going to be doing these live things. On Thursday and on Friday at 11. Double a pizza flour to make 2 doughs. How much starter? So I don't know because I don't know about the timing in your recipe. I love you too. How are you doing live Tuesday, today, Thursday, and Friday? Yeah, so at 11 o'clock. Okay, I think we're going to end it here because I have to start filming tomorrow's video like right now. So thank you so much for all of your questions. Hi, it's Denise. I get that I have to keep doubling the starter, and when I look at a tutorial, it triples. So do I add feeding? You just have to keep tossing and feeding. You're not doing anything wrong. You have a really good problem on your hands. So take that extra starter that like you're throwing out and make some pancakes with it. Sarah Owens, who wrote the books Heirloom and Sourdough, I think has the best recipes online for using sourdough discard. So, you can refer to her. She's fantastic. And I hope you guys have a great day. I'm going to go because the bread is rising and I can't make it stop. Bye. Thank you so much.